This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. It is 6 o'clock. I will call the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. We'll stand and Scott will have our invocation.
God, thank you for this time that we can get together. I pray you give us wisdom and knowledge to make some right decisions and that we would get along in the process. In your name, amen.
Amen. Turn and let's pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. All right, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion.
I have a change or
We've
Agenda?
got to have a second first.
I'm sorry, for the minutes.
Okay.
Do I have-
I'll second the agenda.
Okay. Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor, say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed, no. Motion carries. Minutes approval for June 15th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the minutes of June 15th, 2021.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay,
Any discussion?
yes, I have an edit. Towards the end of the minutes, it says, after lengthy discussion, the committee concurred to add the cumulative 60 inches. And I looked up the word concurred, and I believe it, yeah, or of the same opinion.
Yeah.
All of the same opinion, and I was not of the same opinion.
Oh, my apologies.
Okay, no, it's okay. So I don't know if it should be majority or most.
How about the majority concurred?
Yeah. Majority's good. You good with that? Okay. You have that changed, Ms. Sherry? Any other discussion on the minutes? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, no. Motion carries. Public comments on the agenda items. We have a big crowd tonight. We had none last 2 weeks ago.
I
All
did,
right.
I did mention last meeting that I asked a friend of a person that lives in Surfside to give a statement, and he didn't want to come before the group because he's a little bit shy, but he did write something. So I don't know if I should hand this out or if I should read it. It's a one-page statement. It has to do with how he had a tree that was in question and it ended up falling on his.
I would ask maybe if you wanted to read it, I have no problem, but can we do it at like commission comment?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
that'd be all right? Okay, yeah, I'm good with that.
I don't think it's allowed for council, but I don't think we have any rules against it.
Just tell, that's okay. Okay, tell us
You want me to read it?
Okay.
I mean, I just look at
Somebody
it.
can read it
If
into
somebody
the
had
minutes.
emailed it to me like they do usually,
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just read it for the record. I don't mind
Okay.
that at all.
Either way.
Okay. Okay, let me put this down. Here we go. In early March 2017, I called Surfside to ask about cutting a few trees down as I heard the township was rather strict about removing trees. We just purchased the house and there were a few trees that clearly were a potential threat to our home and our safety. Surfside informed me that I should tag the trees. Surfside inspected them a few days later and informed me that I would need to call an arborist to get the diagnosis that the trees were not well and needed to be removed. I asked Surfside for a list of arborists and they said they don't offer that information. I was frustrated that they didn't offer me any contacts. They said to look online or in the yellow pages. I called several and either their price was too significant or they didn't respond. Hurricane Dorian came along and one of the trees in question snapped, causing nearly $50,000 in damage to our home. Fortunately, no one was hurt, including any of our dear pets. We suffered through the inconvenience of construction and stayed in the house as it was being repaired. I called the city and discussed the issues, and they agreed that they were liable considering the tree was obviously sick. They referred me to city insurance contact, and after a few months of back and forth, they covered my deductible of $4,700 because it was a named storm. I happen to be in the reclaimed wood business and have been offering sustainable LEED certified building products for nearly 20 years. I very much appreciate trees and what they offer to our environment. I most definitely prefer using sustainable products where they can be used versus harvesting new material. I would suggest that if it is very obvious that a tree needs to be removed, you should not require an arborist or any additional opinion. Another idea is to offer an arborist inspection for free, especially considering if a town employee can go look at a tree that is clearly not well and not allow its removal. That is not only a waste of our tax dollars, but also a liability for the town. Also, if somebody wants to remove a tree because of potential significant damage, then I think the town should agree as long as they replace the tree with a tree that is pre-approved by the town. I believe the number of inches should be measured based off the average number of inches as a mature tree, not as a young tree. Thank you for letting me share my experience and opinion with you. Please consider not making the tree ordinances more strict. In my opinion, they are strict enough as it is. Warm regards, a Surfside Beach resident. Ooh, yeah, that was definitely painful.
Yeah, did you see that
That-
picture?
Yeah. Oh, you got it then?
That's the before.
That's the before. I'm surprised that somebody hadn't taken that down already.
Surprised somebody didn't let him take it down.
And that, yeah, that's what, I mean,
Was that a
full
tree that,
disclosure, if I'd been in charge, I would have said, yeah.
was that a tree that required an arborist?
They told them they had to have one.
I know, but what,
Yeah, it looks like an oak. The
Well,
side of it does.
that's what happens when staff is up against a wall.
Yeah, and that's a fair point, that there are times, oh, look at the last page, that one really gets it.
Mhm.
There are times when staff is afraid to make a determination or make a decision. In that case, we had a question come in last week about someone that wanted to do something that I thought was not a land use, but it got passed to me. They'd gone to the police to ask if they could do something, and they'd gone to planning and no one would give an answer. And I said, okay, well, this is the way I see it. So I wrote up something, typed it up, took a screenshot off of the computer, drew a little like thing magically with my computer and sent it to Bill, Mr. Shanahan, and said, okay, this is what this person's asking to do. And while it is not a land use, you know, I wouldn't have an issue with it as long as they're not blocking pedestrian traffic, because they wanted to set up on the sidewalk for a little while. I'll be honest, it was someone wanted to set up a easel to paint a picture. And she said, you know, I usually work maybe 2 to 3 hours from this time to this time, and then the light changes and then I move on. And I was like, you could set up on the beach and we wouldn't say a word. You know, you could set up anywhere. I said, as long as if you're in the right of way, I just want to make sure that you're not impeding people from going back and forth. And so, you know, he wrote back and he said, she can do it. But nobody wanted to make a determination. Nobody wanted to say yes or no. They were just, we don't know.
She could have went to the park.
Well,
Well,
she
the library.
specifically wanted to paint a certain scene. And I understood it because I mean, I said, look, I've traveled all over the world and there are people sitting on the sidewalk in every city that you go to making a living by painting these pretty scenes and selling them for $5. She's gonna sell it for more than that, but
Yeah.
I said, I said, you're not planning on selling it there? And she said, no, this is just, you know, I may come back again to do it, but that's the problem, is that people are afraid to make a call on something.
I think that needs to be looked into and it's not our purview.
Well, and I read, I was listening to what he said about an arborist.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if something's changed, but last year I called to ask for an arborist that had a business license in town because I had a fruit tree that
Mhm.
needed looking at. They
Mhm.
gave me 5.
Well, that was
So-
17, so maybe that was,
well,
And-
I did it at 14 and they gave me a list of arborists to call.
and see,
Yeah.
it might have been who they spoke to. And see, that's an inconsistency. That's a problem.
That is the problem.
That's
You can't-
exactly-
You
Yeah.
can't show favoritism. I mean, ethically, as a planner, I couldn't say, like, people ask me all the time, who should I get to survey my property? And the only thing I would do that was leading is to say, do you have a recent survey? And if you do, that's who I'd go to because they already have the base information.
Yep.
You know, without even looking at it.
As much as I would love to explore this topic, we need to get back on agenda.
Mhm.
So that's for another day.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, business items, chapter 17, article 7, landscaping and tree protection, division 2, tree protection.
Well, I tried to make it as clear as possible, and not as clear as mud. So I used nice color techniques in bold and strike throughs. There's not a whole lot that we were looking at possibly changing. And the majority of it involves, and that's why I did this handout for you today, the majority of it involves looking back at what you Planning Commission recommended to council in 2017. Because some things were pulled out, and I think that some things, there was some misinterpretation and, you know, that the connection was lost between what the intent of the language was. And so it doesn't seem major when you look at it, but when you take it into consideration, it can be. So the first page of the handout I gave you, the larger block is table 17-723.1. That's as it was codified. That is straight out of Muni Code. The smaller block that's heavier and heavier ink and has the red in it, that's how it was recommended to council, and that was second reading approval with the edits. So the reason I gave you both of those is that you can see in the zoning districts R1, R2, R3, we had 5 trees per lot, 5 trees per lot, 3 trees per lot respectively. Minimum diameter measured 2 feet from the ground, all trees. It went to 3 inches, 3 inches, 3 inches, when before it was 60 inches, 40 inches, and 30 inches. And then the minimum circumference was also on this page. Measured 2 feet from the ground, 100 inches, 125 inches, 94 inches. So I don't know that you definitely need to have the circumference and the diameter. I know there's a note in here that says if a tree is a certain size or less than a certain height, I don't think it's on this page, it's on another page, then they would measure it by circumference because you can get, it's easy to do. But if you've got a big tree, it's kind of a challenge to pull a measure around the tree. But either way, you're going to do that to get the diameter pretty much anyway.
It's that big. You can get close.
Yeah, you can get
'Cause
close.
obviously, you're just measuring it from one point to one point,
Right.
and then multiplying it by 3.14, and there's your
Mhm.
circumference.
So, so the reason, the discussion that we've had on this and the disconnect is that where it says 5 trees per lot in the R1 and you need 60 inches cumulative, that means all of the trees on the lot should have a 60-inch circumference collectively, not each, not a certain number, not a certain number. And I think what was inferred was that with 5 trees and 60 inches, they'd have to be 12-inch trees.
And there's no reason why they can't have 7 trees.
That's
Yeah.
exactly where the language came from. The intent behind this was to incentivize people to keep trees on the property. And instead, we removed that requirement and set up that the minimum size of a tree that's planted has to be 3 inches. Okay, but technically the way it reads is the minimum diameter measured 2 feet from the ground, all trees, is 3 inches. So it's not technically, legal speak, 5 trees times 3 inches equals 15 inches. It's 5 trees and 3 inches total. That's how it reads.
And when they did that, that's why we have so many lots that are clear cut, because they can get by with it.
So
And
All we're doing
that,
then, oh, sorry.
that to me is not what a tree ordinance should be about.
and the whole point was to try and keep the
Exactly.
mature trees on the lot, understanding that there's a situation whereby it may impede someone with their ability to build a house, but the release valve for that the rescue is that the BZA can hear it. And staff may not be able to give them permission, but the BZA can. And the intent with the language that went to how the BZA reviews it is that it's not the same as regular state law for a variance, because it's virtually impossible to legitimately qualify for a variance under state law. The hardships that you have to prove, really difficult. So they've got the ability to look at it and have a little wiggle room and say, okay, well, if we allow you to take this tree out, then we'd like for you to plant this instead. Not in the same spot, obviously, because you want to build your house there. But they can condition those types of things.
Well, yeah, I mean, we talked about this in detail
Mhm.
2 weeks ago. And since then, I've been out just looking and I've been very cognizant of lots now that haven't been built on. And I've probably looked at upwards of 50 lots.
Mhm.
And taking in mind that the footprint, we'll say the middle of the lot, there is 2 or 3 times more than 60 inches on these lots.
Mhm.
There's plenty
And
of trees. And like we talked about before, we want to encourage to leave the trees because it doesn't cost you anything.
So maybe
Right,
that,
so if you want to go, for example, if you wanted to go replace a 3.5 inch northern pin pine, it's $800.
Mhm.
3.5 inches.
Mhm.
Now, wouldn't it be easier just to leave that landmark tree there? That's what I think
That's
that's
the
the
point.
point we're making. Be more cognizant of clear cutting. Don't clear cut it. Pick and choose. I mean, we've got, let me finish. I'm on a roll.
You are.
There was another thing, and I had actually reading this. If somebody had 2 30-inch oak trees and they'd be willing to leave them and modify their footprint, I'd be okay with that. You know, I
Mhm.
really would. But if we look at this block, and I read it, and I talked to Carol, if you go to page 8,
yeah,
you go to page 8, and all I'm gonna do is read the first sentence, and you guys tell me what you think. It says, for purposes of administrating this section, no trees less than 7 inches in diameter shall be counted in order to satisfy the minimum number of trees per lot. As you absorb this, what that tells me, if we set a 60-inch requirement and we start counting at 7 inches, that's our first tree,
Yeah.
7 inches. That tells me that you're going to be required to have somewhere between 8 and 9 trees. Right? If we don't start till 7 and we're trying to get to 60, how many 7-inch trees do we need to get to 60?
Mhm.
But why is that in there?
Well, I
It was
think
recommended
it
in the
needs to
old,
be modified, obviously. I think it needs to mirror,
yeah,
you know, if we're going to not start at 7, but maybe start at 3 or start at 4.
Mhm.
I was
Yeah.
just bringing that point. It doesn't make sense unless we modify that. We either got to take it out or change it.
This was one that I felt like, we talked about, I said, this one was a little bit overreaching. And the whole thing reads, you know, less than 7 inches diameter should be counted towards the number of trees per lot, nor shall the diameter of such tree be counted to satisfy the cumulative inches per lot. The minimum inches DBH per lot is the sum of all qualifying trees on the lot. Replacement trees and trees less than 10 feet tall are measured in circumference inches. That's where that note was. We talked about it and I said, well, I put that in there because it was in the original recommendation that went to council. And it was stricken, it was taken out. I don't disagree with having something to that effect, but I agree with you that it should be much, much smaller. So you're talking about something that may be 3 inches or so, like the trees that they could plant, because the trees that you plant can count towards it, obviously.
Mhm.
But I think that it is saying that everything has to be at least 7 inches.
Well, I think there's got to be a minimum
Yeah,
to start with.
yeah,
We certainly don't want to be counting 1 inch, 2 inch
Yeah.
trees. There needs to be a minimum.
3 or 4 maybe.
And-
We got to work our way down
Yeah.
from basically 8 or 9 is what that says you have to have. Now we can go to 4.
and again, I think the intent behind
Just need to
that,
make sure it works.
yeah, the intent behind that, I think, was that, especially for the trees that had a number of the parcels that had a number of trees on the lot, they would be more inclined to keep those trees to get to that 60 inches. Because if you've looked around, you can see that there are a number of lots that will have no problem whatsoever
Oh, my
meeting,
goodness.
remotely meeting that. I mean, it's just,
Until they clear cut them.
yeah, exactly.
Can we-
Well, I'll be
So we
honest with
gotta
you,
get
the
away
ones
from
I
that.
looked at, I couldn't find one who didn't have enough trees.
So-
You gotta understand, these lots have been here a long time.
And when you take it out of context, that some of these seem really, really stringent, but when you go out and look at them physically, it's not as bad as it looks. Now, if you were in another part of the Grand Strand where it has been cut, or it's not, you don't have the tree canopy overall, because I mean, how many of you have seen like social media or anywhere else when the drones that are going up? When you see a drone go over this area, it's like incredible. I mean, because there's so much green, and sometimes you can't, I have trouble sometimes finding the houses on the lot when they're doing additions or something and we're trying to figure out where things are. We've got someone going for a variance, and I couldn't get it from looking at aerials, from looking at Google Earth or looking at the maps or anything like that. You have to go out there and look at it on site because there's so many trees.
Well, and I think too, what we're looking at, and we discussed this at the last meeting, we're talking about R1.
Mhm.
We're talking about
Bigger lots.
9,000 to 14,000 square foot lots. And we're asking them to save 60 inches in trees.
That sounds like a lot, but again, once you
don't
take
think-
it collectively and you see it for what it is, it's not as much as it seems.
Like you say, you got to understand, it's not 512s.
Uh-huh.
It could be, 610s
Mhm.
or, you know,
It could be one that's 30 inches
right.
and then a couple of others
And
that
any
are,
variation after
Right.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
how many inches do you think you have on your lot?
Oh my, I couldn't even begin to count.
Not on your lot.
I've got a forest.
She's got it for us.
Yes.
Can we unconfuse me? I just want to
Okay.
make sure I'm clear on one thing.
Okay.
The statement we're talking about with the 7 inches is marked in green as a change. Am I correct? It is not now in the ordinance.
No, it was removed at
But the
second reading.
2017 Planning Commission put it in and council took it out, and now we're looking at modifying
Yes.
it. Okay,
So to that end, this is where it was in the ordinance
okay.
on this
Mhm.
page. And I just copied and pasted just so you could see it.
Mhm.
But I think it was at the bottom of table 17.725.1, which is the minimum number of required trees in diameter circumference by zoning district, and that's all of the districts. And see, they left the requirements in for the minimum diameter for the mixed use and the commercial districts. They dropped it out. That's one reason I put this in here too. They just dropped it for the R1, R2, R3.
So the way this reads to me is that it only impacts the required number of trees. It has nothing to do with the circumference number. This is only towards your 5,
You mean the note?
the note,
The note,
because it just says in order to satisfy the minimum number of trees per lot. So this is only referring to that second column.
no, it does count towards it because it says, nor shall the diameter of such tree be counted to satisfy the cumulative inches required. Which means that I guess staff would have to go out and flag trees and figure out which ones could be counted. Or either on the tree survey, we'd have to circle them and say, because we do require a tree survey, and that's probably a rub for some people too. You have to pay for that.
Or do it yourself.
So we're talking about just changing the 7 inches to 3 inches or 4 inches.
Well, I had said 3 or 4 inches only because 3 inches is the minimum that you would plant to replace something. You know, to have it count as a number of trees. But see, that's why the note almost doesn't make sense, because if you can't count it if it's below 7 inches, but you can count it if you have to plant it, it has to be 3 inches.
Yeah, that doesn't make
That's a
sense.
disconnect.
Can we just scrap the note?
Trying to make it mathematically doable.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we could scrap it.
The note seems superfluous to me
Just scratch the whole note.
because we already have the 3 inches in the ordinance. Right?
But no, the 3 inches only says that that's the minimum size you plant.
Yeah.
What this note refers to is how they're counted towards the total number or the total inches on the property.
I mean, I guess how can we make it read a little cleaner? Can we just say, you know, a diameter of 3 inches,
I
2
don't-
feet from the ground is what's required to be counted towards?
How about an introductory sentence that says,
Mhm.
what we're trying to do here is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I
Maybe
think,
that
I
would
think
help.
it might do well, we might do well to put something in there in maybe the intent section.
Yeah.
As far as explaining why the measurements are important, and that the whole point is to try and encourage or incentivize people to keep trees on a property.
I think we need to state that whole point in here
Right.
somewhere, because Michael just basically said, what's
Yeah.
the point? Yeah.
Well, all
We
we're
don't
doing is, to me, it's just a lateral move to what was already there.
Yeah,
It's 3 inches was in the old one. All we're doing now is making a note. We're just increasing, but you can still use the 3 inches.
you can still plant
Still.
minimum 3 inches.
Okay.
Scott, I've been holding you up for too long.
No, we're good.
You good now?
Point is moot now.
Okay, sorry,
But you were on a roll.
sorry.
I was impressed.
I know.
So what are we changing it to?
3 inches?
Works for me.
If we've already
Works.
established 3 inches as kind of a
Why
benchmark.
confuse it with another
Yeah.
number?
Well, I
I
mean,
think
3
so.
inches is gonna be about a 12 to 14 foot tree. So it's not like it's a little scrub. It's a decent sized tree.
Okay.
I,
And then, I'm sorry, but I can say something that trees required to be planted at a minimum 3 inches can be counted, you know, that in light of that or something. I mean, we might not even have to put that, so, because we're saying trees less than 3 inches can't be counted. So if the minimum to plant is 3 inches, then they automatically qualify.
Either way,
Okay.
whether it's an existing
Mhm.
tree or you're planting one, 3 inches will get it counted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything less than 3 inches doesn't count.
But we're still gonna have the 60 inches requirement.
I don't think, I mean, again, that's an opinion, and I don't think it's that big a number to meet for a lot. But I mean, if you've got an existing lot of record that's already been clear cut, then maybe we need to have something in that case that say that, you know, the minimum, depending on what you're starting with. Because like I said, the intent is to keep trees that are already there.
Correct.
So you don't want to put this burden on somebody that they'd have to have plant 20 trees on the lot. That'd be,
Well, they get a variance.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think that would be a hardship. I bought this lot and there are no trees on it, or I've only got, you know, 10 inches of trees existing and I'm going to have to plant 50 inches of trees. Then I think ZBA could look at that.
Yes.
Well, I think you talk about a hardship, this ordinance worked pretty good for 12 years.
Mhm.
So 2005 to 2017 worked pretty good.
And there is one thing that I didn't mention. But that first section where we talk about it, it's on owner of existing residence. So that first table, that's 17,723.1 on your handout.
Mhm.
What page is that on? Do you know?
Page one.
It's on page
In the
one.
handout.
Oh, for the
It's on, and
handout.
it's on page one of the ordinance too, Article 7, landscaping tree protection. So the table at the bottom, one thing I didn't put on the handout that I gave you, that I did put on here, is that one has the zoning district, the number of trees per lot minimum, the minimum diameter measured 2 feet from the ground, and that says all new trees. And then the minimum diameter per lot, all trees. So that's where the 3 inches, where the disconnect happened, because this one says that for all new trees, they have to be 3 inches. But for all trees total, you have to have 16 inches.
Shouldn't that
And then
read
what
just
we're
all
saying later
trees?
on is you can't count anything under 3 inches.
Yeah,
An existing tree under 3 inches doesn't count toward the 60.
yeah, we could strike that if we change the notes in
Yeah,
here.
that's redundant.
I mean, why didn't it just say all trees?
But that's what was in there before.
Right.
Yeah,
So the ones existing and the newly planted ones are consistently the same
Yeah.
size.
but see, what the problem occurred when they took it out, they removed new and left 3 inches.
Yeah.
But then they also removed the 60 inches.
Oh, yeah.
So
And-
that's where it kind of went, phew,
Any tree you're going to count on your way to 60 inches must be at least 3
3
inches.
inches, right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's exactly
Whether it's
it.
new or old.
So getting rid of new then?
The new goes back out, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll put a note, because we've got the note.
Can we go back over to page 8 before we move too
Yeah.
far away from it? The last sentence, replacement trees and trees less than 10 feet tall
Mhm,
are measured in circumference inches.
mhm.
So if we're measuring it in circumference inches,
Uh-huh,
but we're referring to, which we're going to change to 3 inches in diameter. Is that confusing?
and it's
Do we
not
need to take out-
DBH, it's 2 feet from the ground, which is not the same thing. DBH is about 4.5 feet.
Okay.
That's diameter at breast height.
So
And
do-
again, I understand why that was put in there, but I've got, that I should make consistent. Okay, so,
Because it says it needs to be a 3-inch diameter to
Mhm.
qualify,
yeah,
but if it's less than 10 feet tall, we're measuring it in circumference inches.
right. But like Sammy said, any tree that's 3 inches or bigger is probably going to be more than 10 feet.
I mean, do we
Yeah.
even need
So
that?
do we need that?
I think that sentence needs
I
to
think it is confusing
out.
because it goes back on itself, because it says the minimum inches DBH per lot is the sum of all qualifying trees on the lot. Replacement trees, I guess because they're separating that out as replacement trees. Okay, I got it. I do see where that is now. That could be a separate note altogether. Well, replacement trees and trees less than 10 feet tall are measured in circumference inches. So new trees are circumference, but then 3 inches is out the window. And if it's less than 10 feet tall and it's less than 3 inches, they're gonna take it out anyway.
Well, I mean, typically, like I said before, a 3-inch tree is going to be 12 to 14 years old,
Mhm.
typically.
I think you just take that sentence out altogether.
I think it confuses it more than anything.
No doubt. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I just don't see where it stops.
It's like,
Stops
we're ma-
everything
it's
from
like
happening.
Yeah.
it looks like you're giving the code enforcement official 2 different ways
Uh-huh.
to not let you cut that tree down,
Yeah,
you know? Make it one.
yeah.
Okay.
And that might have been a bad reference, code enforcement official.
Yeah,
I mean, but
but anybody that's out there
anybody
looking
who's
at it,
reading this,
Yeah.
trying to enforce it, doesn't need to have 2 explanations trying to figure out which one to use.
and like I said, the thing that I think is somewhat confusing too is that in some areas we're measuring it 2 feet from the ground, and in other areas we're referencing DBH. So do you want to make that consistent?
Yes.
I think so.
Isn't the goal to be simple? And
Yeah.
I mean, the town council is saying
Mhm.
we need to keep it simple
Mhm.
and common sense, right?
Yeah,
Okay, just reminding everyone.
I think
and
2 feet from the ground makes the most sense to me. I think that's,
because there's a legitimate reason for measuring it that way.
well, and you can measure, it as a homeowner, I can go out and go grab a tape measure and do it myself. I don't have to go Google DVH because I've
Mhm.
never heard that term before.
Mhm.
Because I really didn't until we started talking about this. I had no, I mean,
Yeah.
that meant nothing to me.
But, and that's why some of this, and that's why I said some of the things in here reference the 2 feet, but then there are other sections that say DBH. And so which do we
Which
use?
one we gonna use?
Yeah,
I agree, Scott, it should be consistent all the way
Mhm.
through, either one way or the other.
And simple
Breast
for
height or 2
residents to-
yeah, a lot of them are clear, like in the zoning permit required for commercial property with primary structure. No permit is required for the removal of trees under 8 inches in diameter or 25 inches in circumference measured 2 feet from the ground. That's clear.
As I recall, we were trying to make it clear to the average citizen
Mhm.
who doesn't know what, I remember saying, how the heck am I gonna measure the diameter of a tree?
Yeah.
Especially in my forest,
Mhm.
you know? The average Joe, if he can do this with a tape measure
Mhm.
for the homeowner, it's simpler than getting out your algebra.
Or the
Mhm.
average commissioner.
Yeah, we're getting confused. If we're getting confused, that's a good
And
warning.
Well, if I,
weeks on it or 3 months?
and what we could put for the purposes of estimating size, like you said, you know, if you take the circumference and you want to know what the diameter is, then mathematically do it. I mean,
Well, I think it's safe for us as planning commission to be able, if somebody asks us a question,
Mhm.
to be able to explain it.
mhm.
Now, it seems like, depends on which section you're looking at. If it's consistent all the way through,
Yeah,
you measure it 2 feet from the base.
Correct.
Measure 2 feet. Oh, wait a minute, there's a different circumstance. Oh, now we gotta do it differently.
Yeah.
We're measuring a tree.
And how
Right.
many people don't know what pi is? Yeah.
yeah.
We're measuring a tree. Trees don't change. So
I like 2 inches or 2 feet.
2 feet.
And
Yeah,
I
2
think
feet all
the only
way
place-
through.
I think the only place I saw the glitch was in a table, a
Okay.
couple of the tables. I think the narrative is clear. And I know that some people think that there's too much narrative here, but if you read it, if you actually take the time to look at it, it says guidelines for pruning or removal of common trees for vacant development, redevelopment, or major addition, residential or commercial, vacant property, not for development. I mean, it gives you headings, you know what you're looking at. So it's not, like I was told that, well, if you read this and then you go down here and it says something different. Well, that's because it's a different situation. The first section is talking about this. The second section is talking about this. And
But the requirements on the bottom are consistent.
yeah,
The situations are different, but the solutions are the same.
and then
Yeah.
I did add, and this is something I think, I don't know if this was a move, if we came up with it. On page 15, a definition for a replacement tree. A replacement tree shall mean any tree planted in order to satisfy the requirements of Division 2 tree protection. A minimum circumference or diameter must be met. A replacement tree shall not be removed due to its size without prior approval by the BZA.
We're trying to say you can't yank it back out. It
That's
can't have-
exactly why I put that in there.
Once you get the CO, then you can take it out.
That's what I've heard they're doing.
I've heard that it's happening.
Yeah.
And I've seen them
And they're
die
saving-
and not be replaced.
And they're
Mhm.
saving the receipts.
And see, the way you can, and I don't want to use the word police, but the way that you can check that is if they had a planting plan that had to be approved, then we've got, you've got something to base it on. Like you were required to put this tree in to meet the minimums. So if you let that tree die or you take it down, then you got to put another one up somewhere.
But we're right back to the staffing issue. If we don't have enough staff to approve it in the first place, we
Mhm.
certainly don't have enough staff to go back and check a year later.
Well, that was one question that the mayor posed when I took some of this to them at their meeting was, what if we hire an arborist? And I said, well, that's pretty pricey, but what if you have one on retainer?
What if we contract for some code enforcement officials?
That too.
Get more bang for your buck that
Can I
way.
change the subject a minute?
Sure.
Why would we want them to replace a common tree with a common tree? We have all these 17,750s, all these trees listed. If you take a tree out, I think it ought to come from that list. The replacement tree, instead of being, I don't even know what a common tree is considered, but
I think Palmetto was one of them.
well, I think we allow that
Yeah.
in R 2 and 3.
Mhm.
But I
Yes.
just wonder, while we're doing this, if you just say, look, if you're gonna take a tree out, you gotta use this list to put it back.
That's a pretty good list, though.
I mean, it's a great list.
Yeah, I mean, that's an extensive list.
I mean, I'd take the hickory out in a heartbeat.
Well, that's one thing I noticed, excuse me, in working with some of these is that, I'm not saying that any of these are invasive species, but typically you would recommend something that is native to the area because it's got a better chance of surviving and thriving. But then the other thing is, and I almost hate to say it on the record, but sometimes people have to be aware of what they're planting because they'll put something in and then a couple of years later take it out because it's too close to their house. Well, guess what? That may be something else to add too. Do we want to say that they can't be within this close to a structure in order to encourage them to be able to survive? Because if they plant it too close to a house, then like I said, a couple of years later, they're going to cut it down because it's a problem.
It's another loophole, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's only if they're using it towards the table requirements. If they're not using towards table requirements, then none of this matters.
Well,
right?
if it's planted within 10 feet, it shouldn't count.
Right.
And that's a challenge with some of these. And that's what staff was saying with the R3, with the smaller lots. When you have a 5-foot setback on the side,
Yeah.
if you have a separation for the tree, you already know you can't put it on the side
Right.
unless you're a corner lot. If you got an extra 2.5 feet over there, maybe you can, but.
Yeah.
But that's something to consider.
But if they have a planning plan that has to be approved,
Mhm.
certainly you wouldn't approve a plan that puts a tree 10 feet from the house. Within that 10 feet, it has to be outside of that. I mean, we've already said you can remove it for that reason, so
Right.
why would you allow them to plant it?
That's a good point.
Well, I think too, especially R3, if you're planting, you're not planting, I'll call them invasive trees.
Yeah.
You're
Mhm.
planting palm tree that
Yeah.
has a real shallow root base. You're not planting a huge oak tree or pecan tree down
you
in
know it's gonna
R3
grow
that
out.
you know is going to
Right.
grow out. Typically, we're planting palmetto trees and palm trees down there because that's,
It's the
that's where
ornamental.
that's where they should be.
It's those ornamental magnolias that are the biggest problem to me, because people plant them and they think they're always going to be kind of cute and petite, and then they start growing up and out a little bit, not like a regular flowering like a southern magnolia, but I've seen them literally put them in landscaping beds by the house. Not necessarily here, but it seems to be, and that might be some of the developers that are doing that kind of stuff. But that's a threat. That's a scary one.
Maybe that's where we just need to lean on enforcement to kind of, when we're approving plans,
Mhm.
to step in and say, this needs to be moved back 2 feet,
Mhm.
or, you needed something else here. I mean, if it becomes a problem to the house, we have language in here that allows you to remove it if it's going to cause a problem.
Maybe
But
we should
we don't
take,
want to create that problem.
well, yeah, or maybe we could take some of the budget from the Surfside Police and put it into the Lake Tree Police, maybe? Thought? No?
And recommend it. It's outside our purview.
So should we recommend that? Take some of the budget from the Surfside Police and put it into the,
I don't think we should tell them how. I think we can recommend something, but not let them worry about how to do it.
Our
okay.
job
Should we
presently
recommend that
is-
then?
No, our job presently is to recommend them a tree ordinance
Yeah.
that works.
Yeah, but keep it simple and common sense, which
Well, I think that's
to
what
me,
we're
we aren't
trying to
anywhere
do.
near.
That's what we're trying to work through these
Mhm.
breast height, 2 feet. So,
We're coming up with a lot of nice theory that we may or may not have the capability to enforce.
Correct.
And I think one thing I should have done with this that I didn't do when I retyped it, is when you sent it to council originally, it was nicely sectioned out so that each of these different things that, like guidelines for pruning removal of landmark trees for commercial business primary structure, was like one box. But I guess when it got formatted, that might have been when it changed. But it probably was a little bit easier for someone who wasn't familiar with it when they saw it and it was compartmentalized, each section was. So I might see if there's any other way I could format it so it's clear, because it does, I mean, you make it bold, each section has its own number. You would think that if someone would go from section 17.724.4 to 17.724.5 and realize that those were two different things.
They jump on things out of context. all
And
the
that's,
time.
I think that's been some of the problem, but I don't know how to fix that. Like I said, when it went up, it was a lot easier to look at and see that this was this section, this was this section. But this is how they would codify it anyway.
I tell you what,
While you're
Scott,
talking about that, why not capitalize protected or specimen or landmark?
Mhm.
So that, it jumps out the page at you.
Yeah,
Because it's not the same line as everything else. I think if you use capitals a little bit more,
mhm.
when you get into specific types of trees.
Yep.
Size of trees, it would jump out at you. And I do have a mistake, I think, on page 6.
You may, because I just saw one too.
It's talking about 17.724.5 trimming and pruning,
Mhm.
and it says 25 inches in circumference measured 2 feet from the trunk. And
Oh,
they're
that
talking
should be
about trimming-
ground.
Huh?
That should be the ground.
No,
Or-
it should be, they're talking about limbs,
Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry,
and that ought to be 2
yeah, okay.
inches.
That's trimming or pruning, yeah.
I think most people would figure that out. It's not.
Yeah,
you
I see
don't
what you're saying.
go out, you
Because I
put it
didn't
on the
change any
limb.
of this, but this was,
It's the only place I saw it was right
Yeah.
there.
but yeah, exactly. And they don't have the nice model that Sammy put together for us.
It's 2 inches. Is that what you're
No,
saying?
It's supposed to be 2 inches
Yeah.
Yeah,
from the trunk.
I can fix that easily.
One other thing that on landmark trees,
Mhm.
you got to have a arborist. Should they not look at whether the tree can be rehabbed? The tree may be diseased, but it doesn't.
Oh, they'll tell, well, that's, and I've been through this with other places where the arborist came in and said, this is the problem. And in fact, the fellow that's going to the BZA, this is exactly what happened. They came out and said that it's diseased, it's got this problem. If they do this and this and this, the tree may be saved.
Maybe.
Yeah, and I don't know if they didn't do it or what happened, but at some point it was worse than they thought. And then the arborist came back, and I think he might have even said, if I'm not mistaken, might have even said I was wrong and this one's a goner. Like they looked somewhere, another part of the tree. Like there's sometimes you can't tell from looking at what's visible, but then when you go to another part of the tree, you can actually see. Like if you can go down and see it through the crown, and probably with drones and everything else, they can see things a lot more clearly. But we had this in Myrtle Beach when we were looking at the property I told you guys about. That was the old hospital site. That looking at it from the ground, it didn't look that bad. But when I looked at it from above, I could see all kinds of things going on the aerial, and I'm not an arborist, but I could see that everything that was up above was like, like when it doesn't happen often, but when you have something like mistletoe that takes over an oak tree, it's like a parasite, it was choking it out. And so there really was, you looked up and you saw a tree trunk and green, but what was green was not the tree, it was all these vines and everything else that had choked it out. And like I said, nobody was paying attention. They didn't see it from the ground level, but when I was looking at the aerials for it, it was really clear. So the experts came in to testify and they were like, these trees, the only thing holding a couple of these up are the vines.
Well, I know with the Arc Plantation, they were able to save 2 of the trees that had a lot of issues.
Mhm. Yeah, they can sometimes they can take out a
Because we're only
disease part,
talking
yeah.
about 30-some trees
Mhm.
in the city.
Yeah.
I don't think we have that many in town of landmark trees left
Mm-hmm.
anymore. So I understand if it's in the footprint, it's got to go.
Mhm.
But if it's on the property and it's, it may be diseased, we'll at least look at it from the standpoint that can it be saved? Because there's so few of them.
And that may be where there's somewhere to have incentive, like you said, if they had a tree like that, then you'd be inclined to say, we're not even gonna make you plant more. We're gonna make you meet that requirement if you've got this much going on your property, but.
You save that and one tree will be okay on your lot.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. If you want to move your footprint over a little bit, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah.
And the BCA
just-
can do that.
Just to be
Mhm.
clear, in, what we were just talking about, the removal process, there
Mhm.
are 5 or 6 different options besides an arborist.
Mhm.
I think it's important that the arborists stay in, but there are other options, whether it be engineers, landscape architects, forestry experts. So it's not just a arborist for people to choose from. I know there was
Mhm.
some contention about taking the arborist out. I'm not about, I don't.
That
wanna take it
requiring an
out,
arborist
but I
might be,
do-
yeah.
But giving you options, I think has helped.
Well, you still have to pay for them, right?
I think so.
As far as Bill's comments about formatting this, so it's crystal clear which topic we're on, because it does get lost in. Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, we can make this purple if we want and 14-inch font and all
Mhm.
that good stuff. But when it goes into Municode,
Yeah.
it's going into their formatting.
They're
They
gonna
don't permit
reformat
a lot
it.
of things like
Mhm.
bolding or whatever. So we could make it crystal clear in our presentation to
Right.
council. But by the time Joe Citizen sees it, it's going to be normal print out of Municode.
And in that case, the idea is that we give something out to them, like if they're having trouble understanding it,
With highlights on it.
then we have a nice thing that we can show it to them and say, this is what we're saying.
Yeah.
And there was a handout, there was a brochure or something at some point. I don't know if it was with this ordinance, but there was a brochure that was pretty clear. Like you could almost do a brochure for each one of those situations.
Yeah.
And that would be the easiest thing, is like, you're developing this way. Here's what you have to do for your trees.
But we need staff to keep that kind of handout up to date.
Mhm.
We don't have it.
I can fix that. Okay.
Your turn.
So what about the situation that we were talking about earlier?
Mhm.
And when a tree that looks like one tree but has several huge trunks that come up out of it, is there verbiage in there that determines how that is dealt with?
Well,
How does that count?
basically right now, if it's measured 2 feet from the ground, so if that happens before 2 feet from the ground, would you say each one counts as one? Because I'm thinking really the ones I'm talking about, probably it did happen 2 feet from the ground. 'Cause I mean, they look like separate trees in the yard. And this was someone building a new house and he had this huge cluster out in the side and they didn't know how to look at it. And I think that's what I did is I went out there and I said, well, it looks like it started off like this, but then this one just comes up by itself. And I mean, it goes all the way down into the dirt. And it was probably 16 or 18 inches itself. And then, so I guess if it's less than 2 feet from the ground, then I could see counting it as separate trees. But if it's more than 2 feet from the ground, then you've got a more established trunk. And those are just big limbs. But live oaks will do that.
They
Sometimes,
do.
yeah.
They do. So if it's less than, if the trunks or limbs or whatever you
Mhm.
come out less than 2 feet from the ground,
Mhm.
you're saying that would be counted as more?
Well, separate trees, because if you took one of those out, the other tree would probably still survive. You know, if you had to take one, if you cut one part of that out, because they'll come out like this is the trunk. I've seen them come out, like that one's going
Right.
that way, that one's going up, that one's going that way. So if you took one of those out, just like with a limb, if you had to, then these would probably still be fine.
Right. So that would literally count as 3 trees if it had 3.
If it's big enough. I mean, I'd count the inches is what I'm saying.
Yeah, if they're 3 inches or more.
As long as, like I said, I think they would survive. One would survive. They're not dependent. They're not symbiotic. One's not counting on the other one to survive.
So I guess my question is, when somebody's reading all this,
Mhm.
and even when the person who's enforcing it all is reading all of this, are they going to understand what we're saying right here and now?
Let me look again at the definition for where they're measuring
And
from.
I'm
Yeah.
just being,
Yeah.
you know, there are going to be things like that come up.
And
I was just looking around at different trees, and I mean,
I honestly think there must have been something in here that put that thought in my head anyway. That because of the measurement of where I could consider it.
Yeah, I would think if you're measuring the tree and it's above the 2-inch line and it's more than, each one of those are more than 3 inches, then they would be measured as separate trees.
Yeah.
even if they're not coming out, if they're just going straight up.
Well, I mean, like, good
Mhm.
example is crepe myrtle.
Maple trees do the same thing.
Yeah, they'll do it.
I have a magnolia.
Sweet
tree
gums will
that's
do it sometimes,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, I'd look at it, I think it's gonna have to be a thing that we'll train them and just say, if you're looking at the 2 feet from the ground, when you're measuring diameter or circumference, 2 feet from the ground, if it's
So if
less,
the limbs separate higher than 2 feet from the ground, it's one tree.
right. If it's lower than that, then
So,
I
and I
count it.
guess my question is, does that need to be in here, or is that just something that is how people are trained, or what? It becomes subjective.
Mhm.
Mm.
And if
No
the
doubt.
owner wants to
and
appeal
that's
the
a problem.
call of the code enforcement.
They can
this
go
one
to the
goes
BCA. If you don't like our determination, then the ZBA can clarify it.
Well, the ZBA is gonna have some
They gotta have
concrete
something-
evidence
Uh-huh.
to
Gotta
go
have
by
something to
too.
look at,
so,
yeah.
Well, maybe I can I'll call an arborist and a landscape person and say, how would you look at this? Because,
I'm just,
yeah,
it's
I
gonna
agree.
come
I
up.
mean, mhm.
It's gonna come up, and then our staff is gonna be going, well, one person's gonna be saying, well, I think that's 3 trees. One person's gonna be saying that's 1 tree.
And in this case, looking back on it, it was, the space that they were coming up was probably almost as wide as that table. And on one side, seems like on the far right, looking at it from the street, the trunk came up, but it didn't come up very far before one of them came off. And then you could see the trunk low, kind of going across the ground. And then there was like a little space, and then one coming up out of the ground. And then there were a couple other ones out there, and they were trying to figure out how many trees that counted for. And I remember going out there and looking at it and going back out there, and this is when Tuck was here. And we walked in, I got him to come over there and look, and I said, I'd count all 5 of those. I'd count that as 5. And it was because the one section was definitely 2, might have been 3 coming out of the first section. And then there was a space and another one coming up and another coming up. And I said, but I'd tell them to keep all of that, because that's.
And I think
Yeah.
that's great that you can walk
Mhm.
up and tell them that, but I think that
Yeah.
one of our objectives needs to be to make it very clear so that our staff, when they go out, can have something to look at and know this is the way it's supposed to be, or it's not.
Yeah,
And I mean, I understand. there's always gonna be
I'll
some
talk to
kind of
somebody
gray
and find
area,
out what they think from an expert's opinion.
But I just feel like that's something
Yeah.
that can.
Yeah, I agree. The whole point is to clarify it, make
Right.
it readable.
Make it easy.
Well, the whole key is you read it, I read it, so somebody else read it, and we
Mhm.
all
We all
interpret
get
it
the
the
same
same
thing.
way.
Yes.
Well, when it says that it's obviously, there's obviously something wrong with it, there's a lot of room for interpretation there if you don't have someone saying, well, you have to have an expert tell you that.
Right.
Like the picture that we saw earlier, that was the same thing. I've looked at it and I was like, Stevie Wonder could have told you that tree was in trouble.
Yeah. I thought about that earlier, but I didn't say it quite like that, but thank you.
Well, you know, I had that happen the first time I had the arbors come out, because they were growing over my house.
Mhm.
And he said, you know, they make me do stuff Stevie Wonder could do. And I wrote him a check.
Yeah. I know there was discussion and way back when, and I'm just really, I hit on it earlier, just really referring to R3
Mhm.
as far as palm trees, and I think palmetto trees are
Mhm.
allowed. But to me, in R3, palm trees are more of a appropriate place than an oak tree or a maple tree or a birch or something like that. But a C, it's not a permitted use replacement tree.
Mhm.
Obviously in R1 or R2, I agree. But R3, it's by the beach.
And it needs to be.
And
And there isn't
Could
room
it
for
be?
anything else. I
Huh?
mean, if you put a building on an R3 lot, and like, rephrase that.
Mhm.
You take a lot and you split it in half, you put a house and a pool, there's no room for anything but palm trees.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no space. You got 5 feet on either side, and whatever distance you have from the street to the building, that's the only place, because the pool takes up the whole backyard. You might put one in the corner, but
Yep, put them in the
it's hard
corner.
to put a tree in on a R3 lot where they've split them. Now, where you take a whole lot,
Yeah.
but then you put 11-bedroom house on it, then you don't have room
Right.
either.
You ain't got room. You gotta have parking space.
In one situation on that, I'm trying to remember what they said on it. I think it was in 2 of the coastal communities that were pretty much tourism based, mostly transient accommodations. One of them had within a long way of the beach that the only trees to be planted were palms or palmettos. But the way the R3 is here, you could say within 2 blocks of the beach or something. And that if it's more than that, then whatever the lot can carry. But to be honest, on those that are closer to the ocean, they're not going to survive anyway. They're not going to have room to put them in. I mean, if they stick one up just to meet the ordinance, it's not going to survive.
You talking about one of the permitted trees?
Yeah. If you plant
Yeah,
a
I
live
mean-
oak,
They're not gonna live down there in that salty condition.
they're not going to thrive.
So why not put plant trees down there that are gonna survive, so we don't have to worry about going, that's one less. We don't have to worry about going and recounting.
Mhm.
You know you're gonna recount it if it's one of these on that list and it's an R3.
Yeah.
So do you want to add those two with a caveat?
I
that
was
it's only
just,
for
I
R3?
just wanted that for discussion to see what you guys thought, because that's,
No, I mean, I think it's fair. I'm not, why have someone plant $1,000 tree that's just gonna die?
and it will die in that sandy, salty soil.
And
Those
even
are-
if it lives, it's gonna be a problem with the structure at
The
some
root
point.
systems
in
are
5
gonna
minutes.
be, yeah, exactly.
It'll fall over, soil's not.
Yeah, like I say, I don't think a palm tree needs to be a counted tree in R1 or R2, but I'm okay.
It can
with
be
it in R3.
ornamental. Yeah. If you want to put it up there to be ornamental.
Yeah,
Because
you can
want,
put them in,
Mhm.
just doesn't
Just doesn't count
that
towards
count towards.
that's
the
it. That's what I'm
system.
saying. I drove up to
I
my
got a
mom's.
bunch in my yard, so I mean,
I was in Saluda County Friday driving up to my mom's for the weekend, and somebody bought this beautiful old, like South Carolina, South Fork type thing, brick. I mean, that house has been there for 100 years easily. And they have planted all the way across the front of the property and all the way down each side of the driveway and around the house. I bet, I'm not exaggerating, I'll bet they had 100 palm trees out there. Easily 100 palm trees
Wow.
they all
in
live-
Saluda County.
They all live.
Well, they've just planted them.
Oh, okay.
Did somebody tell them about the palmetto bugs?
Somebody's vision from a Connecticut magazine.
It might be a sales pitch, I don't know, but I don't think, they're not gonna like what happens to
Fine,
them.
That's about
By the same token, the city of Columbia has gone and planted
$1,000.
along rights of way, magnolias.
Yeah, I'm Florida.
There's coming out of the city of Columbia into West Columbia, there's a stretch where there's probably 60 magnolias on the highway coming down because they have residential back behind it, and it's gonna form a screen from the road, from the right of way. They had to have gotten a grant, but it's pretty. And they were pretty good sized trees they put in.
Will they survive?
They probably will, because they're far enough out.
Okay.
All right, I have one more thing,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna, this might be something Scott might be interested in. You go to page 14, right at the bottom of fines, it says all fines collected as a result of enforcement of this article shall be placed in the general fund.
Mhm.
It could be in the tree police fund. Or, all kidding aside, there used to be a tree fund.
Well,
And that
We used to
money was used to replace trees such. i.e.
There you
Ocean
go.
Boulevard.
that's it.
So
And
How about that?
I'm just a designated fund guy. If we're gonna put it in there, don't need to go in that dark hole.
in 2 of the jurisdictions where I've worked, we've written a fee in lieu of section that if you can't meet the minimum requirements on your lot for whatever reason, I mean, you cannot do it, then you can pay in the fee in lieu of having it. And there was like a base amount, like this much. And all of that went into the same thing.
Yeah,
So they could, so it's like, we used to call them mitigation banks or something like that.
Right.
If you can't meet something on your property that you're required to have, then you can pay for something that helps the entire area benefit from it.
right.
Like, I think they use that mitigation money where they've planted trees along 501 in the last few years.
Mhm.
That's, remember I told you guys, I think that someone came one night and stole, I think 14 palm trees
Yeah.
that they had downloaded into the median to plant the next day, and they laid them down at like dark. And the next morning I went by and they were gone. And I called them and they thought I was kidding. And I went, no, they're gone. They're not planted.
Oh, geez.
So somebody got them.
So,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, the
You don't
$500
get the
per limb fine,
You gotta
500,
quit.
2,500, or $10,000 per tree fines. So people could actually be fined for these?
Landmark trees.
But- Okay,
Yeah.
no jail time though, right?
Well,
No.
if they refuse to pay the fine, they might I mean,
Yeah.
that's between them and the judge.
Okay, so
Yeah, that's way
just so
down the road.
residents know that, all right, so there's thousands of dollars of fines and potential jail time
Mhm.
for what we're passing here.
We're not passing.
We're
This is already
passing
here.
it to the town council. Whatever we come up with, we're passing it to the town council, right?
We're
So,
recommending.
just remember, so our fellow residents, you're saying, if you don't do this, you're going to get fined $500, $2,500, or $10,000. To me, that's pretty
Well, if you
serious.
don't enforce
It's
it,
already
it
here.
doesn't matter.
Right,
This is not proposed, this is on the book.
I know. Well,
This is not something that this commission
Yeah, this was,
is putting forth. This is already
I
present.
know, but what happened? Didn't the town administrator make a proposal for a tree ordinance? I thought he did. No?
No, I mean, they just pass it. Procedure is
Mhm.
council passes it to us. We come up with a recommendation, we pass it back to them, and then
they're the decision
they
making
like
body.
it,
Right.
change it,
My-
do whatever.
I thought there was something that he gave to
I
us
don't
to
think that
consider.
he did it. Didn't staff come up with something that we
Was that
looked
the
at at
staff?
some
That's
point?
what,
It was
that's what
very
he asked us
simplified.
because, yeah, he had people
That might be what.
that
Thank
kept coming in saying they couldn't do this. They couldn't. And most of it was not
Right. So what happened?
cutting
to that?
trees down. Well, I mean, that's where this started from.
Right.
So staff took the ordinance and tried to simplify it.
Correct. So we're disregarding what the staff
Well,
proposed?
you looked at it.
We did.
Yeah,
We're-
and it was,
We're saying no.
yeah,
Well, they're saying no.
yeah. Because it was oversimplified. And they basically took everything and just kind of squashed it into
Yeah.
this section, thinking it would be easier, but instead it made it more complicated.
In your opinion.
Well, if you want to try to enforce it, then
It's not, it's unfortunately
think that-
not one size fits all.
and it wasn't that
Right.
different from what's in here. What they changed was they deformatted it. I can give it back to you.
Yeah, I have.
They deformatted it, and so it's like where it says section 17, 730 point whatever, that wasn't there. You just had the headings,
Right.
and the language was pretty close to the same.
But it was a lot simpler than what we're,
Well, it was simpler in that it was not formatted. And
And it may have been unenforceable because they took the headers and the language away.
yeah, let me see if I can.
Were these penalties, were they, where did the penalties come from? Did they come, is it a manual?
I think they were.
Tree? I mean, it had to, I mean, we had typically when we have fines, they line up with
Mhm.
somebody else, whether it be Conway, Georgetown, somewhere, they had to come from somewhere.
And they're pretty close because someone called me recently, I think Georgetown County called me and said, how did Myrtle Beach find someone $48,000 for tree removal, unauthorized tree removal? And thankfully I was familiar with the case, and someone bought a piece of property and it was an older home right off Ocean Boulevard, and went in and took down a bunch of the big trees, and they had just massive trees on the property and didn't get permits or anything to do that. And so based on what they took down, it added up to like $48,000 in fines. So he appealed it to the circuit court, and the circuit court knocked it down to $24,000. It still made him pay $24,000. Wow. And my understanding is, and I wasn't there at the time, my understanding is
Lawyer fee.
he did it wantonly. Like he had come in and said, and he was a developer. I'm doing this and this, and they were like, don't do it. And he did it, and then they went back but that, like I said, the issue then was, they felt it was clear that he knew what he was getting into. And so that's what Georgetown wanted to know. If the fine limit is $1,000, then how did they get him for that? Well, it was multiple fines like this. I had a situation where I fined someone the maximum that I could based on the tree, and I told you about that it was huge. Picture 5 people standing on the stump. And the judge actually enforced it and fined him per day until he came up with a solution. And the next day he walked in the door and said, this is what I'm going to do. And that satisfied it. So he got fined for the day he went to court, or the day he went to court, and the day that he brought it in, then there was nothing after that.
Well, I think,
But that was the judge doing that, not me.
I understand Scott's concern about these
Mhm.
fees, but as you read back through this ordinance, there's different ways in which you can remove a tree
Mhm.
or a limb. Different reasons, whether it be 10 feet, whether it be over the right of way, or if it's diseased or dead. So I think these are there for just somebody just malice, just says, you know, the heck with this. I don't care about the rules. I'm cutting that tree down. I don't care what you say. But I think most people will come and get a permit, since it's a free permit. You're not being charged for it. So would I like to see us find somebody $10,000? No. But would I like to see somebody go clear cut a 300-year-old historical oak tree off of a lot? No. Wouldn't want that either.
I think I recall part of the discussion at some previous time about the amount of the fines. We were in a situation, and this may have been the ordinance between you and when we got here.
Mhm.
Say the fine was $2,000. And the developer looked at the lot and said, oh, that's the cost of doing business. He walked in to apply for his building permit with a check for $2,000 because he was going to take the tree down. So we needed to make it so significant that they couldn't just laugh at it.
I did talk to one contractor, and they said it is challenging to build a new structure without clearing the property, and you can plant trees that will grow over the years.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge for, contractors to do that.
This is one of the things that was examples of what I'm saying. Again, they took out all of the formatting. So all of it, they put it in an outline form, which is a good way to start, but you can't codify something that's just an outline. You have to have the separate sections. So in order to address the different zoning ordinances, and the table is the same as what's in the current ordinance, zoning districts is a heading. This ordinance attempts to cover all potential zoning districts such as, but not limited to, residential, commercial, vacant property, redevelopment, and major additions. Well, those aren't all zoning districts, so we've already clouded the issue. And then it goes over to say, that's all it says. So basically, whereas this ordinance has all the different sections for each one of the situations that we talked about, that one little line takes all of those sections out. So it's easier to look at because, like I said, all of it is kind of repetitive.
I really wish we
Yeah.
had more residents here to give their voice, because I think we'd have a whole different opinion than.
You'll probably have, I can promise you there'll be some at council.
Yeah.
So they show up.
They learned not to bother with us because council's going to change it anyway.
Yeah, a week from
That's the
today,
bottom
there
line.
will be a workshop with what we're sending them next Tuesday. So, and I'm not gonna say any more about this, but I think the biggest thing to me about this tree ordinance is the importance of the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we need these trees? It's just environmental impact. And we talked about it. And I'm not gonna read it again, but it's an environmental impact that we need to try to preserve.
Well,
thought
it's
we were
like I
gonna try
put
to say
at the back
something
of
like that
this.
in the introduction.
Yeah,
This,
she will present it to council.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, just some of the points, and I almost didn't print this, and I was like, no, I mean, because some of these things are important. I mean, the stormwater capacity, you take down a tree, if you've never flooded before, you may flood. Your cuts energy consumption. If you've got a canopy of trees around your house, you're not gonna have, your air conditioning's not gonna work as hard as it would. I mean, there are a lot of things that are there that we don't say, but these are some of the reasons why you have them.
And I think most people probably know that, but I don't think they want to be forced by the local government to have the potential of a $10,000 fine. You know, if they do
But
something
this is
wrong.
not the only section of the ordinance that has fines associated with it.
No, I know.
So,
And you're only talking 40 or 50 trees in the whole town
Mhm.
that qualify as landmark.
Sure.
And I know they,
Yeah.
fine used to be 25,000 because there was a
Right.
tree across the street from us. Actually, they had 3 big huge oaks in that yard. They took out a bungalow and bought 2 houses, took out 2 of the big trees, left 1, and put in 3 houses, big houses. They had to take the other 2 out because the footprint, but they wanted to take the 3rd one out and the city said no. And he said, and if you want to take it out, it's $25,000, so it's still there. And I love it.
That's what it takes.
But I mean, this was in probably 2003, 2004, and the fine was $25,000 taken out one of the old oaks.
one of my former bosses was fined in Charleston, $18,000 for cutting down trees on the peninsula in Charleston proper.
Hmm.
And I thought, you're a county administrator?
If I've got a lot of trees in my yard, so,
Mhm.
do I only have to have that 60-inch basin? I can go out and cut other trees and see if I still got enough trees to cover that 60-inch basin.
Well, the question is, huh?
At least 5 trees,
Well, you have to have a minimum of 5 trees,
a
yeah.
minimum of 5 and 60 inches.
But what if I've got 2 oak trees that's 60 inches each?
It's not hard to do.
Right.
Yeah,
I've probably got 2 in my yard that big. Can I go out and clear cut everything else out of my yard?
But why would you want to?
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Why would anybody want to?
I'm just.
I don't think most people would.
Because in that case, if I wanted to build something, if I wanted to go say, town, I want to build something, they said, well, you can't, you gotta have 5 trees. I said, well, I've got 2 oak trees here that's gonna take up my whole, enough for them at footage. Why can't I clear cut all the rest of them
In order to build
out? Order to build something.
for a house to live in?
Well, not necessarily, add an addition to my house.
It could be an accessory building, it could be a swimming pool.
That's what I'm
Yes.
trying to get at.
Yeah.
You can.
I'm just-
It all depends on the lot coverage percentage.
I mean, in my lot, my case.
Oh, you got plenty.
Yeah, I'm not cutting down no trees. I'm not cutting down.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, what if these lots that he's talking about, you go in there and find a couple of oak trees in there that's that big?
Mhm.
And it don't have to be in the footprint of the house, and they clear cut everything else out.
Look down at 17.
Oh, I
On the
know.
right.
Listen,
You want to talk about clear cutting?
All you got, yes,
By what you're saying.
as
Oh,
long
my
as,
God.
as long as he has 5 trees and a
Uh-huh.
minimum of 60 inches.
And as long as none of those trees that you're trying to
Unfortunately-
cut down are such that you can get approved to cut them down. I mean, none of those could meet those minimum standards to say that, like, he might have 2 oak trees that are together 60 inches, but he probably has other trees that might fall under some of those protection classifications too. So that's the only thing to me that would say it, unless we're gonna say, well, you gotta have 5 trees.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
Well, I guess
that's
the
what I'm
question,
getting at.
yeah, and you bring up a good point. I think this commission needs to know the answer. If he has 2 big oak trees and he's got 60 inches over here with plenty of trees,
Mhm.
and he wants to take those oak trees out, can he take those oak trees out as long as he's got his 60 over here and his 5?
That's what I'm getting at.
Not if they're protected under the standards in the ordinance. The 60 inches is a minimum. It
Right.
doesn't say you can't have more than that, but at a minimum, you'd have to have that much.
But if he wants to build in that space, put a pool, put a storage, whatever, he can take 1 or 2 out.
As long as they don't trigger that point, because it does say in here, if it's for the purpose of making an addition or a pool, then they'd have to go to the BCA and the BCA could decide it.
Okay.
But
So let me make sure I heard that correctly.
Mhm.
The answer, if it's a protected tree, even though he is over 60 inches, he is still not going to be allowed to cut that tree down.
if it's protected, I don't think anything relieves you unless BZA says it's okay. I don't think that there's a threshold, and you meet the threshold, all bets are off. I think if there's a whole lot more on the lot that collectively may seem like an important amount, and he already has 60 inches, then that's one thing. You got a lot of scrub trees and volunteers.
Oh, I
and that kind of
understand if he's
thing. But
got
if it's
pine
something,
trees or something like that, but I'm talking about protected type that are on this list.
yeah, if it's if the ordinance protects it, I mean,
You
then,
have a reason for taking it down, right?
yeah,
And it could be,
Right.
I just want to protect the big trees, so I'm
Mhm.
taking these little, smaller trees
Yeah.
out so the big trees have a chance to grow. I mean, who's going to argue that?
that's a good point.
So you can take it out. You can't unless there's a circumstance to where you're building an accessory building or a swimming pool.
Or you want to protect the trees that are there.
Yeah.
You know, if you read the first one is,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's pruning and trimming.
Or if it's posing a risk.
Yeah, posing a risk, hazardous, 10 feet, roots, yeah, power lines.
And I'd like to make a little more comment. You talked about the pine. I know a gentleman that said, you just go ahead and take the pine and cut the tree down. He done that.
Mhm.
And it wasn't no $10,000 fine, but it was, I'm thinking like $7,000. He wanted it out of the way, so he went ahead and cut the tree down and paid for it.
Was it on his property that he purchased?
I mean, that's just the way some people work.
Yeah.
But we're starting to get into a realm here.
A
where
what if.
These fines are
Yeah.
a percentage of the current lot values. I mean, sub 5%.
That's a good point.
I mean, I'm not talking $5,000 on a $40,000 lot. I'm talking
Exactly.
$2,500, maybe up to $10,000. Usually you're only gonna have one of those trees on one of these lots
Mhm.
because that tree's gonna dominate that small lot.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be a $250,000, $300,000 chunk of dirt. I mean, I think on a percentage wise, and I'm
That's
not
a
even.
60-foot lot right now.
Exactly, and I'm not even getting into the cost of a build. I'm just talking about, I want to buy this lot and
Just
clean it
the
up.
lot.
So I don't think it's too cumbersome from a cost basis when you start looking at percentages for where we are currently in market. I mean, market changes, but.
Yeah.
These
Yeah, you're right.
fees have just
Good
gotten
point.
easier to bear as far as that's concerned.
You guys had to sit up because people call and complain they can't hear you.
Sorry.
Text me and complain they can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Here we go. So do you want me to,
I was gonna ask you, what changes do you have currently that we've discussed that aren't here or here and we're taking out?
Mhm.
So we can
oh, I've got the typo.
make a
That we might-
motion and move forward.
Mhm. Everything that's shown in here so far in green, if we start on page 1, everything pretty much goes along on page 1, except I would take out new
Right,
on the third column.
right.
All of that's all pretty straightforward because none of that has changed through a good bit of time. On page 6 is the typo where it should read 2 inches from the trunk instead of 2 feet from the trunk. Page 7, I've got the changes that were shown, and that's returning the minimum diameter for
Right.
all of the trees on the lot and the minimum circumference for all the trees. And then on page 8, I've got the note that was added back in for the purpose of administering the section, with the exception of the last line that says replacement trees and trees less than 10 feet tall are measured in circumference inches.
You have that at 3 inches?
Well, I had that basically as stricken.
No, I'm
Okay.
talking about the first part of the note.
We're striking
Oh,
7
yeah,
inches.
yeah, I'm
and
sorry, I
put
didn't
in-
say that, yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
We killed the last sentence, right?
Yeah,
We
the
killed
last
the
sentence,
last sentence, right.
that's what I took out.
okay.
Color's too close to the greens, I'd put it on white. And again, a lot of this stuff is just pure repetition.
You've
It's the
got
same.
you got the 2 feet on page 3, under 17,723.5. Should be
Page 3.
2, yeah,
Oh, I found
Yeah.
it in another section.
Mhm.
Is it there too?
yeah, it's there in.
Yes.
I'll go
there
back
in
and check all of them. Yeah,
Page 6 and
Yeah.
page there.
okay, yeah, thank you.
That's gonna be under trimming and pruning.
Yeah. I'll go back and read it word for word. Okay. And see that we were talking about mitigation required for removal of trees without a permit. When trees cannot be replaced as stated above, a penalty shall be paid that equals the average amount for purchase and planting of replacement trees based on market rates from 3 local nurseries. All penalties shall be deposited in the general fund. That's below the fine section. So that's a little bit more information. And then on page 15, a definition for a replacement tree.
See, I would like to go back and change that general fund to tree fund.
Yeah. So, and the reason I brought that up is that the mitigation required, we can use that to say it's a tree mitigation fund
Mhm,
if you wanted to. mean, that's-
absolutely,
Instead of general fund, so tree mitigation fund.
yes.
Don't we have to do that in the form of a recommendation that council create the tree fund though?
Well, yeah, everything's gonna have to be
Yeah.
formally,
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
would
we
have
just-
to
If we just change
designate
the
another,
word, they'll never know.
they'll have to designate another fund
Yes.
yeah.
instead of
That
20.
would be
we'll
your
have
recommendation
21.
is that they create a tree mitigation fund,
Right,
Okay.
and that fund be used for the penalties that are incurred by someone who breaks this.
well, the reason if the penalties are gonna be enforced because somebody's cutting down a tree, I would like to see the money used to replant trees.
But how would that be done? I mean, who would take that money and who would plant the trees?
The city,
So the city plants it into residential properties?
not necessarily, it may be
Oh,
on,
into,
it may be in public
Most of the
space.
time, it could be in right of ways,
Yeah.
like Highway 17,
okay.
Ocean Boulevard. If you ride down Ocean Boulevard, you'll see several palm trees.
And
they
everybody
tried some
benefits from
knock-up
that.
Yeah,
Right.
just, yeah.
And that's what I was saying, Horry County used it to, because when I came to work here, everything along the highways were Bradford pears, which are now considered invasive species. And they're horrible little beasts. I mean,
You're about
Whoever
15 years
thought they
old
would
and get you a good wind
Playing
blowing
them all
across.
over
them.
Charlotte,
Yeah.
then they can't, had to come back 20 years later and take them all out.
All
and
right, we
that's
got
what they did in Horry County.
any other changes?
That's all I've got.
What about palm trees for R3?
Um,
Palmetto trees?
oh yeah, we did talk about that.
I just had that on page 17 in my notes.
Yeah. I think it was added back into palm trees.
For R3. And I think palmetto trees are what, they're R3 and R2?
Somewhere in there, I remember seeing.
Yeah.
it.
Hold
they're-
on, it's,
They're in there for those two
Yeah.
districts, but palm trees aren't.
no, this was, in the second reading and approval, August 22nd, 2017, Palmetto was stricken and removed from the list
Okay.
of, but that's when, I guess that was the protected list.
But it seemed like it was added back in and.
I think it was saying you could plant it, but they weren't gonna protect them.
Okay,
Like the size, even if it met a certain measurement, it would still wasn't protected.
yeah, I think
necessarily.
palmetto trees and palm trees should go into R3.
Okay,
I really. do.
Otherwise, you don't have
R3,
anything to go in there, especially when they split the lot,
right.
or they put
Well,
11-bedroom house on the lot.
Plant something that's gonna live, you know?
And see, that was the discussion we had early on about, that may be something to look into at a later date. About the we have lot coverage standards. You can only have so much on the lot, obviously you can't build in the setback, but then you can't have the entire lot built on. We've got somebody going to BCA because they're asking for a variance on where they place a detached garage. But we also have to look at the stormwater impact on the stormwater, and then they can't exceed a certain amount of lot coverage per the zoning ordinance.
The impervious surface.
Yes, well, the impervious, but that's the stormwater side of it. It's not, there are two things in the zoning ordinance that speak to that. One is pervious, impervious, and the other is lot coverage. They're two separate things. So you might be able to meet your lot coverage, your impervious or pervious, which is what you want, but you still exceed the lot coverage. I've seen that happen a couple of times. Which-
Is 50%?
I think so,
R1?
yeah.
All right. I think that is,
So are we gonna do anything about are we gonna do anything about what I was talking about with trees that have
I think,
Multiple trees growing from a trunk.
trunks?
I think you were gonna call an
I'm
arborist
gonna
or
call an
somebody and
expert,
find
find
out,
out if they think we should have anything.
or what
And
it,
if
or what it
if
should.
not, though,
Uh-huh.
if we don't have anything, then how is that counted?
I think I could write a definition for it, maybe.
And
I think we need to let her find out what the experts think about how it should be counted for, and then make our decision. about
I
which-
just think there needs to be something that says how it is, whatever they say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Something that says how it is counted, so it's not just a subjective,
I think it
oh,
should
I
be,
think it's a tree, or I don't think it's,
I think it should be addressed, but I don't
And if
think we
it's-
have enough information yet.
And I
Yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think it needs to be
Well, I
addressed.
think the question is it gonna be one tree or is it gonna be 3 trees?
and if we're
And if it's
defining
where
it,
it's measured from,
yeah, if we're defining the measurement at
2 feet.
more than 2 feet, or what it is at 2 feet from the ground, then that's where it's clear.
Okay.
So, if that split happens below the measurement,
Uh-huh.
then obviously it's from,
Then we're gonna count it as 3? or-
well, because, if it's 2 feet from the ground, if it's more than 2 feet from the ground, or right at 2 feet from the ground, then I don't see how you could not. I think.
If it splits off at over 2 feet from the ground, then it would be one tree.
Right.
And
Multiple limb.
okay, if it's one tree, it's measured at the 2 feet mark?
Yeah,
Yeah.
as long as it meets that 2 feet, that 2 foot measurement, because that's how it's defined.
When
So
you,
if it splits at 8 inches, it's 2 trees. You measure each tree, there are 3 trees, however many branches you got at the 2 feet level.
Yeah, I think the determination is at the 2 feet line.
And that's, and like I said,
You know,
I
if
think
you're-
that's, mhm.
20 inches and it's split. If it's 24 and it's still one solid piece, then it's
then it's one
one tree.
tree.
If it splits over 2 feet, still one tree.
And if it's one tree, you measure it at that,
It's at that
Before it
2 foot.
splits.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's at the 24-inch mark.
okay.
so do we want to drop in the definition of a trunk, what we consider a trunk then, and define it there?
You're gonna have to do that.
So
Well, I mean,
she's got a guy.
I'm defining it as where it's being measured, which is by definition at 2 feet.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
From the
Like
ground.
And that-
we would
that
define a
makes
trunk
sense.
as in,
That makes sense.
2
Mhm.
feet from the ground to 2 feet to 24 inches.
Mhm.
This is the trunk. So if you have a split in this, it's,
Well, that's what I'll find out if
multiple
that's
trees.
even necessary, because if it's at 2 feet, which is where you measure it,
mhm,
if it's one piece, it's one tree.
it's one tree.
If it's at 2 feet where you measure it, you've got 2 big chunks going out, then I don't know how you would not look at it as 2.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
It's relatively clear.
So
makes sense to me.
this is just another quick question, just because it just came off of my head. If somebody combines 2 lots, then they have 1 lot.
Mhm.
So then the rules pertain to the 1 lot. Okay.
As long as they combine it by plat.
Yeah, they have
Right.
to have it resurveyed.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Exactly.
Because we do have situations
And
where people combine it for tax
If
purposes.
they want to divide it,
Like re-subdivide?
Mhm.
let's just say that it doesn't, I mean, let's say it's combined, some of the trees come down, and then later someone wants to divide it.
Then they'll have to meet the standards for the redevelopment.
Okay. So then they would have to add some trees.
Yeah, and because they're not protected by anything being grandfathered, saying that was a legal lot of record.
Okay.
When it was a legal lot of record. And some of the things that may be kind of hardships that people need to go to the ZBA is we do have some substandard lots. Remember, we talked about increasing the size lot, minimum lot, size lot for R1. And I went out and checked, and we had the table where you had this many lots that were substandard at this number, and then this many more lots that were substandard as you went up. So, I mean, you could still use it, but the BZA can give you relief from that. So if if your lot is that small, I can meet the setbacks, but I can't put this many trees on it. There's an app for that.
Gotcha.
And the last thing, are we okay with that?
Yeah.
The last thing on the agenda,
Wait a
Discussion item?
minute.
oh, sorry.
I want to get this behind us
Okay,
before we move on. So as we were, I'm gonna backtrack, just be patient with me. We're on page 1, we're taking out new.
okay, let me get back to it.
Some of the errors on 3 and 6,
Mhm.
page 3 and 6. Let's see here. Obviously, all the changes on 7, 60 inches, 40 inches, 30 inches, the circumference changes. We're changing on page 8, going to 3 inches, striking the last
The last
last
line.
sentence.
Mhm.
Make sure. Page 14, we're gonna have a, mitigation tree fund
Mhm.
versus general fund. Obviously, the change on 15 with the replacement trees. And last but not least, I put it on 17, palm trees and the palmetto trees allowed
Uh-huh.
as countable trees in R3.
Okay.
Before we move on, don't we actually have to have a motion to
Mhm.
recommend again?
That's what I was trying to clarify. So the motion, we've gone through the changes.
Yeah.
So we need to make a motion
Mhm.
in a second to send these changes to council. Do I hear a motion to,
Yeah, I'll make a motion to propose the changes that you just described to council.
thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second it.
A second. Any more discussion on these recommendations to council? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, now to discussion.
And I'll send this back once I
Okay,
get it before we do anything.
okay.
Okay, it says feather flags in commercial zoning districts. If you don't know what we're talking about, let's do these. These are considered feather flags. Currently they're not addressed in the zoning ordinance at all. But I just want to tell you the way I've looked at them to date and what I've told staff is that if it says sale or if there's something that's not obviously an advertisement, it's not, there's no logo on it, there's no, like this one says, Street Tacos Las Gueras. Okay, well, that's one thing, that's like the company, that's like the business name. This one is a home developer. And so, I mean, they put them up when they're having open houses, that kind of thing. And usually if they're doing something on the weekend, if they're put it up after 5 on Friday and take it down before 8 o'clock on Monday, no harm, no foul. But some of what's going on is that people are putting them up as advertisement for their business. Like it doesn't say, I don't know, sale, or it doesn't say anything generic. And so what I've told staff is that if there's something specific to it that is considered signage, or I would consider signage like the business name, and they've already got all of their signage, then it's got to go. If it's up there for a temporary, like we allow banners for grand openings, and I'm looking at that, it's not any different than a banner that we would allow. So if it's something along those yeah, then I'd say you can keep it, but that is still temporary. But there's nothing in the ordinance where it comes up is that the paper that used to be handed out when you got your sign permit showed it as not prohibited. That was the word. These are examples of prohibited signs. And I think the idea was that because it wasn't specifically named in the ordinance, then it's prohibited. But there are a lot of things that aren't specifically named in the ordinance that have gotten by. Not to say there's anything wrong with them, they're just not specifically identified, because I've been doing this for a while, but I'd say I don't remember seeing things like this 20 years ago.
No.
So I mean, it's always something new. You know, there's always going to be. I remember when I first started working, we didn't use the little plastic real estate signs that you use now, that you just walk up and like put the little thing in the ground with your foot, hop it down on top of it, and you've got a sign. So do you want to write some language into the sign ordinance to look at some of these things, or do you want to say as long as it's not what is defined as signage, they can have it temporarily? Or just say no to everything?
Or do we should at least set a time limit.
Yeah.
No more than 1 week or 2 weeks, whatever makes sense.
Mhm.
And if we do have limits on the size of signs.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm bringing this up, because typically if you have some kind of special sign like that, it's temporary, you might be able to do 4x4, like political signs that aren't like the ones you stick in the ground. So 16 square feet. Well, these aren't going to be 16 square feet. They're not that big, although I've seen some monstrously big things that are put together like this before.
And they're making them bigger.
Bigger, and because they're cheap. I mean, they're not expensive. But if it's something that's not considered signage, that's where my rub comes. If it's signage, then it's a definite no, or they've got to get a permit for it. I mean, if they want it to be, if they want to use it, then they, either we say they can have it or they can't have it. But I can tell you that we used to have in ordinances and other places that you couldn't have the cigarette men either that do this number. And they're all over the place now. Not necessarily here, but we've got to decide, do we want it, do we want to allow them, or do we want to say no? And again, like I said, my threshold was, if it obviously would be something that you would see on a sign, and it's clear that it's advertising the business and not saying, y'all come or whatever, then that's where I am right now. And I don't know how much of a problem it is, but it was just brought up to me by staff.
I know there's some issues in the past about legislating contents.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lawsuit in Arizona, Gilbert.
Florida is doing that right now.
Trying to legislate contents, so we need to be very careful.
Well,
very careful.
That's why I said if it's something that is obviously a sign,
right?
Then, like, if it's the same thing that's on their sign right now, and it's just more advertisement that it helps people to see it more, then I count it as signage. If it's a picture of a pizza,
Are we counting that signage against their signage on their building?
They're entitled to have this much signage.
If they've maxed out on their signage on their building, they're not going to allow them to have the temporary sign.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is the signage out front is what I'm saying. So if they've got a pole sign or a monument sign or whatever,
right,
and they've already exceeded their maximum for that, then I would say they couldn't have additional signage out there. Now, like I said, if they're gonna go out and put it up, like people freaked out when Johnny D's sign looked so big, but it was actually smaller than the Denny sign. It did look big, but it was not considerably less, but it was less in terms of square feet than the other one.
Well, I give you my opinion. It's kind of like Bill's, in a certain way.
Mhm.
As long as it's limited to a time frame.
Mhm.
If Surfside Pizza wants to put a pizza on their flag
Yeah.
and they want to put it out for 7 or 10 days,
Mhm.
I don't have a problem with it.
And I wouldn't have a problem with that.
I'm all about promoting business.
Yeah.
So, and I'm certainly not going to sit here and tell them, all right, well, you can put this on it, this on it, this.
Yeah,
on it,
no, I'm not
but
trying to
you can't put
legislate.
this. No, I'm not legislating.
No, I'm not trying to legislate that, but if it is obviously if it says exactly what's on their sign, then I think
If it says Surfside Pizza along with the picture of the pizza, then it's,
I would look at it as signage, and if they already had but Surfside Pizza is a different story for that, because do they have a sign out front like that? They have a building
little
sign.
small one, but based on their storefront, it's probably
Yeah.
close.
So like a new
I mean,
management type thing.
New management is an
Yeah.
okay thing, in my
it's a
opinion.
generic
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, that anything that, I mean, and it may even show, like I said, if it has pizza on in your pizza place, but if it's something that's what they would put on a sign if they put up another sign, and they're just getting around it by sticking it in the ground, then that might be a little bit different.
Or we do it, is there a maximum size as far as temporary signage, like you
Yeah.
said, Johnny D's?
Yeah. Mhm.
It looked big, but it really wasn't big, but yet do we want to see 20 of those on 17?
Yeah, well, it's all based on your frontage,
Yeah.
and, you can have wall signs, window signs. My favorite one is that Horry County took, it was Bass Pro Shop to court to get them to reduce, or to get them to get rid of a sign because they put a roof sign up on the building when they put it in. And they were just like apoplectic because they had a roof sign.
Oh, yeah, we had one time that they had the stickers on the windows.
Mm-hmm.
They had to remove them.
Mm-hmm.
They went inside, put blinds up and put the stickers on the back of the blinds.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
It worked.
Everybody's after.
Wasn't part of the building.
But I agree with you. I don't want to do anything that's going to take away people's ability to get, customers to come in. By the same token, you don't want to trash it all up, and then, like I told them, the biggest thing is if it's in the right of way, it can't be in the right of way. It's got to be on their property.
Right.
I think we need to be careful with the time frame
Mhm.
thing too, because we're seasonal.
Because what?
We're seasonal. So if you got a
There's
3-month window here and you
90
say,
days.
I really want,
90
know,
days is kind of the rule.
I want June, July, August, then
Mm-hmm. Yep.
do we allow that? And
Yeah.
say, okay,
Yeah, we allow a lot of the things that we consider temporary, we allow for 90 days, or you can have it for this much, not to exceed this much in a calendar year. So,
and
I mean,
that might be
you
the
can
route
work
we
around
go,
it.
where they could do a week
Mhm.
for spring break or,
Mhm.
2 weeks, July 4th or something like that. But that's going to be a nightmare to enforce.
It would be, and
We're
like I
right
said, I
back
think,
to who's gonna count.
Well, that's what brought it up, and I told them-
Stop stepping on your toes.
No.
I told them, until I talk to planning commission, I'm gonna ask the BZA's opinion on it, and look at it from there. And the only time I tell them they have to take it down is if it's in the right of way. Let's not start any fires or anything
Well,
like
and
that.
I think there's a time, there's got to be a time frame of
Mhm.
some sort, whether it be a replacement.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? A sign sits out there for a
Gets all
month or
ratty.
two.
Mhm.
It gets wind blown, it gets ratty, it's faded.
And that's something I said too. I said, if it's obviously needs to be removed, you can tell them that it's no longer,
Now we're back to the
Safe.
enforcement issue.
Correct.
Who's gonna tell them?
but they see it all the time. They're the ones that
You
are
would
calling.
think, yeah.
They see certain things. I mean, certain things jump on you like, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, I would hate to have a ragged out sign in front of my business advertising my business. But I see it a lot.
And I'll tell you what we are seeing a lot of though, is that we had one business that put in a new sign and the one next door was so impressed with the new sign next door that they came in and said they wanted a new sign. And people are really stepping it up. Because, you know, when you're driving along, if you're not familiar with the business necessarily and you see something that looks kind of grungy and the sign's okay, but you know, but it's like, you can tell it's kind of patched in there and everything. They may not stop there, but they see this brand new sign and it's all bells and whistles and, you know, it looks good. They'll pull in there.
Let me ask a question.
Competition.
For the record, right now, this week, does the town even have a code enforcement official?
Yikes.
Yes, no?
Maybe.
Yeah. I think, don't we?
The website doesn't show one. I don't think we even have a code enforcement official, so what the heck?
Oh, okay,
Volunteer.
then no.
Do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanted to get that on the record, that we're making all these nice rules, but
That's the challenge.
What's that?
Well, the code enforcement official, I mean, the building official, he can make those calls.
I understand that. That we got the building official and we've got the permit clerk and vacancies otherwise.
Well, we had a
According to the
fire chief-
website.
We had a fire chief that could do it too, but he's not here either.
Thank you.
Well,
All right, that's all. I'm done with my soapbox.
Any other, did we answer the questions about about the signage?
yes,
Okay.
because like I said, I'm gonna get
What your-
What
BZA.
was our answer?
Well, I mean,
I know, I wasn't sure if we did or not.
well,
Got
I think I'm gonna look at it and see what we've got.
So
Well, see, when you said code enforcement, I also consider the building official is also code enforcement,
I understand
Yeah.
that, but we've got,
but we don't have somebody actively going out and doing it right now.
no, we don't. I wanted that on the record. Thank you.
Yeah, but I mean,
Somebody does go.
that's what I'm saying. I mean, but they're not out there just looking for stuff. They're going out to do the inspections and things like that.
We have a building official and a permit clerk and
Right.
vacancies. Yeah.
So what did we say about the flags?
Well, I'm, be careful about what it says. We need a time limit, you know, you don't want them to be trashy
And how much, what time limit are we talking about?
Well, we were talking seasonal and I said that there's other language in there that allows things for 90 days. So,
Are we okay with everybody having flags out there for 90 days?
well, again, that's going to be subject to whether or not the flags can last 90 days.
Well, and it's subject to if they can qualify to even have a flag
Right.
too, based on their
Do they have-
existing sign.
Yeah, do they have, that's what I'm looking at. If it
So,
qualifies as signage, if it's not just generic, then,
so you're saying if it's generic, they can't have it at all?
no, if it's generic, they can.
Okay,
What I'm saying is it shouldn't be another sign.
gotcha.
It shouldn't
Okay.
clearly
So
represent
if
another.
it's generic, it should have a time frame.
So if McDonald's was still here and it said they had an open 24 hours, that's fine. I mean, or if they had pictures of french fries, I mean, okay. But if
They
it
can
said,
have
if
that.
it said McDonald's down it, then I'd say, no, that's a sign.
And if it says open 24 hours, they can have that for, you're saying, are we saying they can have it for,
The other language that governs how long you can have a temporary sign, I would put it in the same.
okay.
So
Category.
the generic sign does not count against their already permanent signage.
No, I wouldn't say so.
Okay.
But it still is a temporary display or whatever.
Right.
And see that, so a lot of times when they put those things up and they come in and say, you know, we're gonna have this for this
Grand
period of
opening
time.
or
Yeah,
Summer sale or,
I mean, could it be like 90 days, but every month you have to
renew
put a
it.
new one?
Yeah, you could
a
renew
new
it.
sign,
Oh,
so
oh,
it's
well, yeah. Mhm.
Not, but as a business person, you don't want a raggedy thing say, hey,
That-
come on in.
That's
We
what
have
I'm
a
saying.
disgusting
think
place in here
that.
too, you
Yeah.
know? So, I mean,
I agree.
That's why I used to get so frustrated. We go out and put the signs up for public notification and we're like, oh yeah, now people are gonna know what it is. And then they never go pick them up.
Hmm.
And Well, we're worse than they are. I mean, you get signs all over creation. And this,
All right.
there's no right of case.
All right, we're
All right.
good with that. Any other topics commission wishes to discuss tonight? Hearing none, I will move on to public comments.
That made my night. I appreciate it.
I'll let you kind of go out of order, but that's okay. You can thank me later. Any,
When he comes off the record.
any commission comments?
Mr. Chairman, I was the
Scott?
only no vote, so would you humor me to let me read a statement?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. This has to do with the tree ordinance, and I do understand and greatly respect the fellow members of this commission and their passion on the subject. In good conscience, I, however, could not endorse this new stricter ordinance. I would support incentives to plant trees or other creative ideas. Passing laws to fine people hundreds or thousands of dollars for not following the individual convictions and passions of some, I believe sends the wrong message for this town. Trees are important in many ways. I believe the individual property owners should have the freedom to decide what kind and how many trees they would like to plant. I drove by a newly built house north of Surfside Drive, and it has over 20 beautiful newly planted palmetto trees. Beautiful property. They did this on their own without a local government enforcement policy. I understand it is a small town and we want to keep the natural charm. Surfside is residential. And don't forget, we do have two expansive oceanside natural preserves just north and south of us, Myrtle Beach State Park and Huntington State Park. There are many benefits for having trees. Instead of taking money in fines from residents, why not give incentives? Instead of passing stricter laws, I would support more creative solutions. If we start a fund to find donors to provide free palmetto trees for residents to plant, I believe you would see an entourage of interested subjects and a flurry of newly planted trees. I always want to err on the side of individual rights and freedoms. It's very, very important to me. I don't know why. Let's give the decision-making power and maybe incentives to the residents to plant more trees. We promote Surfside as a welcoming family town. Laws like this, I believe, send the wrong message. Council is looking for a simple, common sense tree ordinance, and I don't believe the one that we passed accomplishes that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commission comments? Yeah, I just to make it clear, I appreciate Scott's opinion, but I just want it for the record to make sure that people understand this commission did not add the fines to this tree ordinance. These fines already existed and have existed for years and years. So this is not a new concept we came up with. So I just want everybody to understand that. So with all that being said, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.